Throughout our 134-year history, one trophy stands proudly as being synonymous with our club. In 1901, Tottenham Hotspur became the first and only non-league club ever to win the FA Cup, a record which still stands to this day. In 1991, an 8th FA Cup final triumph meant Spurs had won the trophy more than any other side. 25 years later, and a weakened Spurs side slip out of the Cup, leaving more questions for fans to ponder. Do we take the Cup seriously anymore? Was Pochettino right to make so many changes with a quarter-final place at stake? And has the most important trophy in the history of our great club now been reduced to a backup plan? This is your e-Spurs podcast.
Come on, you Spurs! 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 Tottenham!
We don't need leaders if you've got a team like that. This squad is just so special. I don't want to wake up. I'll just keep pinching myself.
We're gonna do it like we did last year. Tottenham!
Right the way through the season, we've had standout performers at various times, and I think that's what you do need to do if you're going to be successful. It can't be about one or two players, maybe like it has been in the past.
They always come to see us whether rain or snow.
I think there's been so many things that have gone our way this season, and not by accident. Even recently, we're like we said, 7 wins on the trot in all competitions. But things are happening and have been happening recently, which don't generally happen to us.
Hi guys, welcome to the e-Spurs podcast. As always, a very busy week for the club. Don't forget, we want you to get in touch and stay in touch with the show wherever you listen to us from around the world. And we know we've got listeners from as far away as New Zealand to the States to Africa and across Asia. So welcome to everybody. If you're listening to the first time to the e-Spurs podcast tonight, thanks for giving us a shot and thanks for listening. We're on Twitter and Instagram, guys. Give us a follow on there. Both of those at @e_Spurs is our handle. On Facebook, the address is /e-Spurs page. And new for this season, you can follow us on Google Plus and on YouTube. For the links to all e-Spurs platforms, just go to our website, guys. That's www.espurs.blogspot.co.uk. Tonight on the e-Spurs podcast, we'll get the thoughts of our team on the draw in Florence and our cup exit at Palace at the weekend. I'll be putting your questions to the panel on all things THFC, and we'll preview another massive week ahead as we welcome Fiorentina and Swansea to the lane. 2 games which will dictate surely the direction our season takes. So exciting stuff. Another great show for you guys to come, hopefully. Before we get into all of that, let's introduce the e-Spurs regulars. It's Jason and Ricky. How you doing, fellas?
Very well, mate. Thanks, and you?
Yeah, very good, Jace. Thanks. Not too bad. Rick, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, not bad at all. Obviously disappointed about yesterday's defeat, but hopefully there's bigger and better things for us to come this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, mate. As you may have noticed, John can't be with us this week due to work commitments, but hopefully we'll have John back with us on next week's podcast. Before we go on, don't forget that we now put out 2 episodes each week, guys. So on Mondays, you can catch the usual e-Spurs podcast, and on Thursdays, don't miss our brand new offering, Extra Time, featuring the e-Spurs talking point each week. And if you follow us across Twitter and Facebook, guys, you'll know that each and every week we put out the e-Spurs talking point, a different THFC related subject each week, giving you guys the opportunity to send us your feedback and thoughts, and those will then be read out on the podcast each week. So really great stuff so far we've had coming from you guys, and again, you can catch that each and every Thursday, so don't miss those. On behalf of the lads also, thanks for the great feedback we've received, guys, on the podcast over the last few weeks. We really appreciate that. And if you enjoy what you hear on the podcast, as we always say, we'd really appreciate it. Any sorts of reviews, feedbacks, head over to our iTunes page and leave a review on there also. That's very much appreciated. Okay, so on to the past week. We mentioned in the previews for last week that the games, it was a tricky set of games when you're talking Fiorentina and Crystal Palace, bearing in mind the changes that were likely to have been made. Let's go to Jace first up on this one, Jace. We're going to focus on the Fiorentina game first up. Quite a few changes made in that game, Jace, including Mason as captain, Chadley up front. In a game we really, especially first half, pretty much dominated. But ended up coming away with a 1-1 draw. Again, it was another case of so near and yet so far, wasn't it, in terms of chances we missed and the opportunities we had?
Yeah, I think on last week's preview we knew he would rotate the side, but I think we probably thought he'd go slightly stronger in the Europa League game than the FA Cup. But to see Dyer miss out and Dembele miss out, Harry Kane left on the bench, I think was also a bit of a surprise. And it seemed like, all right, the priority then is the FA Cup over the Europa. But I thought the first half we did okay without being really spectacular. But you definitely saw the lack of that out-and-out genuine striker that can hold the ball up, the work that Harry does, the constant hassling and such to put defenders and that under pressure. And whilst we had a lot of the ball, we didn't create as many chances as I'd have wanted us to. We got the penalty, which I thought was a genuine penalty, a good run into the box from Ben Davies. But we kind of let the second half drift away, and perhaps, the lack of match fitness from Ryan Mason started to catch up with him. And that kind of bears itself out by the fact he was that little bit slow to close the boy down, that then the shot loops in off of him. But in the end, probably 1-1 was just about the right score. They probably had the better of the second half and we had the better of the first half.
Yeah, I think so. Spot on, mate. And when you think about it, Rick, the stats which came out afterwards, the possession stats, we once again had much of the possession, but they, once again, further evidence that sometimes those stats can be meaningless when you don't end up finishing your chances.
Very true, but if I'm going to be honest with you, Andy, if someone showed me the team lineup before the start of the game and said, would you take a draw and an away goal, I would have bitten your hand off. I think you're looking at it and you see that team. I think some needs to be reminded that Fiorentina sit third in Serie A, so it was never going to be an easy tie. And they put out a decent team themselves. And bear in mind, it wasn't the strongest Spurs 11. For us to go out there, get a crucial away goal and leave it all very much open, and probably in the balance for us as an advantage for the second leg, I thought it was a very, very good result. It's one of those games where I think it was, like Jay said, a game of two halves. We had the first, they had the second. Again, Pochettino, it just shows you, because of the change in the team, that everybody is buying into his philosophy. He now does have that luxury of being able to tinker with the squad, and everybody's buying into the concept. I don't believe that was a poor performance. It wasn't our best performance, but I can't say I disagree with his lineup. I thought he'd done the right thing. He's rotated where he has to. He has got it wrong in some cases, what we pointed out this season in terms of the Arsenal game, which we lost at home in the Capital One Cup. But I'm full with him at the moment for the rotation. We've got 12 FA Cup finals to come in the Premier League, so the cups, like we've said, are very, very important. And I don't think he's shown any disrespect to the Europa League or the FA Cup, which we'll come on to shortly. And 1-1 leaves it very much open for the second leg. And I'm still quietly confident in front of a packed house at White Hart Lane, we shall progress.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because there's mixed thoughts across the board as to whether or not it was the right team selection. And I suppose, again, as we constantly point out on here, because of the nature of the season for Spurs, it's a case of, damned if you don't, damned if you do for Pochettino in some sense. He's got such a difficult balancing act. Jace, in your view, was Pochettino's team selection right in the Fiorentina game, or would you have gone a little bit stronger?
I'd have certainly gone with Harry up front because, as I made the point last week, I thought, the weekend almost gave us a free hit. There wasn't a Premier League game at the weekend, and try and get the job as best as possible done out there before we had the second leg at home 3 days before a Premier League game. So I might have gone with Harry, but I think that's really, when you look at the side, we do have two players for pretty much every position. Obviously, Jan's out injured, so you're stuck a little bit with the two centre halves. But other than that, there's two players for every position, with the exception of the striker up front. And, one of the things I've always said about the Europa League, and people say they're worried about players getting injured in it, but you sometimes you have to look at it, the opportunity that it gives other players in the squad to get match fitness. And, Mason being able to get 90 minutes under his belt, and OK, Bentaleb came in at the weekend, but you could see those players are that little bit rusty. You can see they're not up to full speed, full fitness. And because of that, they need those extra cup ties and they need to play games, because if they come in with 3 or 4 games of the season left, having not played for 3 months, then it will really notice. So, for me, the Europa Leagues and the FA Cup gives you as much chance to benefit from the fitness players get as the danger of losing one or two injured.
Yeah, sure. It's again a tricky balance for him to make, isn't it? And to get right. And when you think about it, obviously Fiorentina, you're talking about having a second shot in the game. So even if the result doesn't work out in Florence, you've still got the home leg to fall back on, whereas the Palace game was a one-off, all-or-nothing kind of game, wasn't it? So a lot will say the Fiorentina game you could afford, as Ricky's just mentioned there, you could afford the rotation, and he got it pretty much spot on. Someone who, of course, did have a great game once again, was Kevin Wimmer. Rick, he's come in, he's not just stood in for Vertonghen, but he's to such an extent now, where some are talking about him maybe keeping Vertonghen out of the side.
He just looks so calm and composed on the ball, Andy. It's like he's been playing all season. I think we've been fairly lucky, FA Cup aside, that we've not really noticed the absence of Jan because of how good Wimmer's been. And he's had to wait for his chance. And I think he was very, very, very unlucky, the fact that in the summer, a player of Toby's ability became available to Spurs, and we've not been afforded the luxury over recent seasons to have good, competent, reliable centre-backs. And at the time we made the decision to go for Toby, and naturally obviously him and Jan's partnership of them both being the same nationality, it just worked so well. And I think the concern was that when Jan got injured, how would Wimmer step in, bearing in mind he's only played in the Europa League and he played in the Capital One Cup tie, but he's been superb. I don't think you can fault his play. To me, he looks just like an understudy to Vertonghen. He looks like he's just studied his game throughout the summer and throughout the season and just based his game on him. He's just so calm and composed on the ball. He's got great ability, and he's definitely, it's very difficult to drop him when Jan is ready and available to come back, because you can't say he's done much wrong. I mean, I don't really see where I could criticise him at all in the games he's been in. His position is great, reads the game so well, and isn't it nice to now have the luxury of having defenders on offer that they don't seem to have those kind of typical rickets in them that they used to every game. We just seem to have a team that have cut out the individual errors. And you've got to say that's down to Pochettino as well. I'm sure he's working with the players. I mean, people forget Pochettino himself, when he was younger, was a centre-back. So hopefully that has played a part in how good a defence has been this season, with the whole great defensive record of us having the best defence in the league. But yeah, can't fault him, and long may his form continue. Yeah, absolutely. It's just not Spurs, is it, having a good defence? It takes some getting used to as a Spurs fan, the quality that we've got in that defence at the moment. It's fantastic to see. Jace, the Fiorentina goal in this game, a little bit Spursy to say the least. There's nothing that could have been done about that one. No one at Spurs to blame for that one, was there?
No, I think, it was a decent hit, wasn't it? I think Mason, like I say, I think a fully fit Mason might have just closed him down that fraction earlier and been able to get more of a block on it. But, you've got to make an allowance for him having his first game for, 2 or 3 months or whatever. So, and then, that just puts the loop on it and it hits the underside of the bar. And I saw somebody comment that, I think Hugo might have got it. But I think to have a little bit of a pop at Vorm at that would be a little bit harsh. So, no, it's just one of those. Yeah, absolutely. You're going to get some like that in games go for you. You're going to get some go against you, aren't you? It's nothing can be done about that. And of course, they then move on now to next Thursday, and we'll preview that game in more detail later on the podcast. Rick, for you, is a draw enough in Florence to see us go through? Oh, I don't want to. I hate making predictions with Spurs because they normally come back to bite you, but our defence has been so good this season that providing, obviously, that's given us the basis already of the advantage that Fiorentina will have to come out and attack us, because effectively, if it is a 0-0, Spurs will go through on the away goal. So naturally, they will have to come and attack us, and hopefully that will leave gaps open for us to attack. I think the hardest thing for Spurs at home is, as I said before, is trying to break down a team. But naturally, it'll be different with the Fiorentina game on the Thursday, because they're going to be coming to Spurs already knowing they have to score to stay in the competition. So that will obviously, hopefully, give us the advantage where there will be gaps for us to exploit, and we will have the space on the flanks. And I'm sure we'll see on Thursday a team selected that will be able to go out there and win the game. I don't think Pochettino will take any chances now, bearing in mind that we're out the FA Cup. I think we'll be going all out for it on Thursday, and rightly so. It's a European competition. Despite us looking on course for the Champions League in terms of the league being 10 points clear of the 5th spot, I still think for Spurs, European competition, it's a special trophy, the UEFA Cup, Europa League, whatever you want to call it.
and we should be going all out to win that trophy. And there's a great chance this season. There's still a few English clubs left in there that both look like they made progress, but still a very, very good chance for us. Like I said, if you offer me a 1-1 before the start of the first game, I would have taken it, and it's all in our hands for the second leg, and that's what you can ask for.
Yeah, I don't know about you lads, but I didn't really see anything from Fiorentina attacking wise other than their goal, which we mentioned was a little Spursy to say the least. I didn't really see anything from them attacking wise that I was very concerned about going into the second leg. We controlled the game, I thought, first half. I don't think they had a huge amount of chances. So I think getting back to the lane, if we play a strong side, control the game, then I can't see it being too difficult, providing we play that strong side in the second leg. And as you mentioned there, Rick, great history in the competition. Let's go for it now, Moving on to Crystal Palace, lads, in the FA Cup. Now, we mentioned, obviously, at the top of the show, the history of the trophy and the connection with Spurs and the disappointment that I certainly felt going out of the Cup. I'm sure you lads echo that, and many other Spurs fans out there. However, there has been that debate on social media during the week, hasn't there, as to whether or not it's maybe a bit of a blessing, Spurs going out of the Cup, with regards to the other competitions that we play in. Jace, where do you stand on that one?
Well, I thought the side he picked, if you honestly looked at it, you say, if you look at the spine of the team we've had this year, I think Dyer, Dembele, Ali, Kane would definitely be in our first choice team. So after that, he left out Toby, didn't he? And he left out Eriksen. I think probably most of us thought Eriksen was probably, having played on Thursday night, was right to have the rest. And then he left Toby out, which made us look a little bit unsteady at the back, I thought, because there was just wasn't quite that understanding at the back, and it also meant that Dyer wasn't screening the back four, which he usually does. But I still thought at kick-off, I thought, well, we've gone a little bit stronger than in Europe, and I still thought the side that we picked was probably strong enough. And I thought, in fairness, for an hour, we played okay. I mean, Dele Alli has the ball come off the line in the second minute. He hits both posts. I thought Onomar had that chance, didn't he, where he had a little sweep at the near post and just put that wide. The Kane free kick. The keeper makes the save from Kane early in the second half. Harry missed the back heel just in front of goal, which, any touch on that and it goes in. So we had enough chances in that first hour to not just be level, but to get in front. But the worry then was the last 20, 25 minutes just kind of petered out, and the substitutions that came on with Eriksen and Chadley and such coming on didn't really have any impact on the game.
I mean, when you look at those two Dele Alli chances, you could, I guess, argue that after half an hour we could have been 3 up. It was one of those days, wasn't it? And certainly going into the second half, you're sitting there thinking it is going to be one of those games, and it kind of sort of led the way Crystal Palace were playing on the counter-attack. It was always leading towards them having a chance towards the end of the game, and worked out that they did. Rick, would you say that maybe we need, when you think about the chances we had in Florence and the chances against Crystal Palace, would you say that we need to be more clinical in front of goal, or would you just put it down to bad luck?
I think it's a bit of both, if I'm being honest with you, Andy. Again, based on the team selection, I would say out of the 11 picked, they were pretty much the first team players. I mean, the only players out there that you could argue weren't part of the first team originally was Vorm, Onomar and Bentaleb. But apart from that, I mean, it was pretty much a full-strength team. With regards to the clinical question, I mean, the thing for Spurs is what's been so great about them this season is that their defence has been so solid that if you look at it from that perspective, we can score one and know that we've pretty much got the side to see out the game because of how good we are defensively. We don't need to score 3 or 4 because defensively we're so good we can afford to score the one and then defensively shut up shop. And I'm exactly the same as Jace. I thought we played quite well. It's just when it's not your day, it's not your day. And I think what's funny is football, isn't it? Swings and roundabouts, but it's small margins. I don't think we played that bad. I was at the game myself, and the crowd were really willing the team on. Unfortunately, these things happen in football. It is a disappointment, but people need to remember that when we have suffered a defeat, the team have always showed that character and resilience to go on a run. And by all means, we've got 12 FA Cup finals to come. So if ever we need a winning run to start, it's now. So hopefully the boys will regroup. The messages all coming out of the changing room seem to be one of very disappointment to go out the Cup, which is good to see. No one likes to lose. This group, for me, epitomise, character and strength. And you look at a player like Adebayor rolling around on the pitch yesterday. I'm just so glad. We used to have players at our football club that used to smirk when we used to lose,
Yeah.
and now you can see the difference that we've got players that are so gutted when we don't win. So this is a different Spurs side. That's what we've had previously. I've got no doubt that the side will go on a run again and come good. It is a disappointment because we've all said how important the FA Cup is for us, and I still maintain that. But I want to look at it as though there's something bigger for us to come, and fingers crossed, that's achievable. But only time will tell.
Yeah, it is nice to think now that we've got Adebayo off the books, isn't it? After so long of trying, you think he spent 4 years at Spurs, and 3 of those we were trying to get rid of him. So, it's puts it into a bit of perspective, and it's great to see players with 100% effort out there rather than the, sometimes less than 50% we used to get from Adebayo. So that's nice, certainly nice to see. Jace, in terms of the team that played against Palace on Sunday, one of the changes that was made was Bentaleb coming back in the midfield. Long time since we've seen him in there after that great season last season. He's come back in there. What did you make of his performance?
Well, it certainly wasn't his best game, and he certainly didn't look the same player that we'd seen last year. But as you say, it's his first game back, and it takes time for players to come back. They're not just going to walk into the team having not played. Well, he played, I think, in the game at Leicester, didn't he? In the replay at Leicester, which was the middle of January. So, you're a month on again from a guy playing. And this is why as I made the point earlier, you do need Europa League games, or you do need cup days, because these players don't play like in the old days. They used to play reserve team football, but they don't play that anymore. And so their only chance is to play in cup ties, and they've got to come and play at some stage. And, I think the strange part about it was, he got a little bit of stick on social media, and people were saying, why didn't we pick Tom Carroll? But it was only 2 or 3 weeks ago when Tom Carroll was the one getting all the flack, and people were saying, why isn't Tom Carroll in the team?
Yeah.
But, and people call for rotation. They say, we can't be playing all these games because players will get tired, and then you bring somebody in and they're not playing particularly well because they haven't played, and then everyone has a go at the player. You just, it's damned if you do, damned if he doesn't sometimes. I felt, but he'll benefit from getting 90, a proper 90 minutes under his belt. And I wouldn't have any worry if he plays on Thursday and if he can get another 60 minutes under his belt, because in the long run, it will help us, because those players may well have to come into the team later in the season.
Yeah, kind of say on Jason's point, I fully agree. Do you know what the problem is with Spurs fans? And I say it all the time. We seem to love a scapegoat. It's such a shame, because you see the change, the turnaround in this squad to what Poch originally had at his disposal, and he's got rid of all the bad eggs. And we still, even though we've got players now that are so committed to the cause, we still find reason to pick on players. If it's not Tom Carroll, then it's Bentaleb. If it's not Bentaleb, it's Kyle Walker. It used to be Danny Rose a long time ago, and even Harry Kane. Let me tell you, when Kane burst onto the scene, there were still Spurs fans that weren't convinced he was the player, and were calling, why haven't we got another striker?
Yeah.
We seem to love a scapegoat, and it's such a shame to see, because this is the most together Spurs squad we've seen in years. Why aren't we supporting every player on the field? Like Jay said, it was the guy's first game back in such a long time. I don't know what football fans expect at times. Do they just expect the player just to seemingly slot in and have a man-of-the-match performance? The kid's just come back in the starting lineup. It's going to take time. And I'm exactly the same as Jace. I'd give him another game Thursday. Listen, these players are only going to improve with games. And it's the same as Tom Carroll. When Tom Carroll first started games, I admit myself, I wasn't too convinced. But a player is only going to improve with match time and match experience. How do we expect players to develop? Even Kane came onto the scene at Spurs, and we all said, I'm not too sure about him. It doesn't look like he's going to fit into the style of play. He doesn't look that great. And Kane has surprised us all. And people forget that very, very quickly. I just don't get it. Why are we not supporting every single player that goes out there to wear a Tottenham shirt? We haven't got an Adebayor. We haven't got a Capoue. We haven't got a Cabal that's going to disrupt the squad. For God's sake, why are we not just backing the players that we've got? They clearly want to play for the club. They're giving it their all. And I don't think any player goes out there to necessarily play badly, apart from Adebayor, if I could say.
I was waiting for that, yeah.
I was waiting. But honestly, we've got a squad now in general that, there's that connection now with the fans. And for God's sake, get off these players' backs and back them.
Yeah, well said, Rick. I think it goes down to football fans, isn't it? As people, I think it's a lot easier to blame a player on the field rather than admit that the other team were better in a lot of respects, isn't it? It's just a shame that, as you say, a lot of the criticism is aimed towards a lot of these younger lads who are clearly going out there giving their all, and a scapegoat, usually more often than not gets found. One man who certainly can't be chosen as a scapegoat in any of our games this season is, of course, Dele Alli. Once again, a great game on Saturday. Could have had a hatful, as we've already mentioned, after the first sort of half an hour or so. Jace, with regards to Dele Alli, I want to focus mainly on the stories that have been in the press during the week with regards to his temperament. And what have you made of those? And what did you make of Pochettino's response towards the comments that were made by the press about the prickly nature, shall we say, of Dele Alli?
Well, there was two reactions from Poch, wasn't there? There was the first one on the initial Thursday night that said, yes, I need to have a word with him and I need to have a look at it. And then by the time we got to the pre-match press conference on the Friday, it was a case of, I don't mind him doing it. I can see a little bit of myself in him. So I think, it was a little silly thing he did in Fiorentina, and there's no doubt about it. Had the referee had a better view of it, he would definitely have been sent off, and in a way, quite rightly so. And perhaps he needs to be sent off once in a game like that to really bring the message home to him. But I think, it's a bit like even when Wayne Rooney was the young player. You don't want to take that side away from them. That's the side that's making him drive onwards. And I think it's down to maturity. In time, he'll learn where and when he can get involved, when he doesn't want to. I think always with players, you don't mind a little bit of retaliation. You want them to show a little bit of fire in their belly, but you don't want them to do a silly little thing where they provoke something when they didn't really need to do it. And that was a case in Fiorentina where he got himself involved without needing to get involved. But, he's a young kid. We're having a brilliant season with him. Let's be fair, at the start of the season, none of us thought he'd be in the team at this stage. And then the way the season's gone for him, right down to his England debut with the goal. So get off his back, just let the boy develop, let him mature. And, sometimes you have to learn through mistakes. And I'm sure there will come the time when he makes one. And he got himself suspended for the Chelsea game, didn't he, earlier in the season? Yeah. But, let him learn. And I'm sure, there's not too much to worry about at all.
Yeah, I've got to say, I love the guy to bits. I think everything about his game is fantastic to see. The appetite he plays with. And it's often said, isn't it, about these types of players, that if you take that aggressive nature, the aggressive side of their game away from the player, you lose part of the player. You lose the hunger of the player. I mean, you've seen the likes of the Roy Keanes, the Vieiras, the Tevezes. They've all got that, not a naughty nature, but they've all got that side to their game where they play with such hunger and such desire that it can sometimes go slightly over the line into the unknown, and sometimes on the wrong side of that line. But if you take that away from their game, you come out with less of a player. And I've got to say, I absolutely love to see that fire in his belly he plays with. Absolutely love it. It's just getting that balance right and not crossing that line, I think, is the one. But absolutely fantastic.
I think, we've compared him a lot on the show to Gerrard. And, Steven Gerrard, even right at the end of his career, was getting sent off after 32 seconds in a game against Manchester United. Yeah. So, he never got rid of that part, but I don't remember too many people still having an argument that Gerrard wasn't a world-class player just because he'd have the odd brainstorm himself where he'd make a silly challenge.
If I can just say, lads, just on that point with Ali, that, listen, I don't advocate any of our lads lashing out at our position. We don't want that. But over the years at Spurs, don't you not think we've lacked, fearless players, bit of, have balls for God's sake, just show you're not going to walk over. Yeah. Teams used to play Spurs, we used to be a soft touch, people used to walk all over us. I like seeing that aggression, but it's got to be channeled in the right way. Yeah. But I've got no problem with that. I've got no problem with players that play on the edge, and that's what he is for me. He plays on the edge. We've got to be careful because, like Jay said, he does risk the potential of being sent off when he does things like that. But I would not be trying to take that out of his game whatsoever, because that part of his game makes, like you said, Andy, him as a player. And if you take that out of him, then we're going to lose part of the player, and we don't want that because there's so much to come from him. But it is about just channeling that aggression in the right way. And listen, he had that ban earlier in the season where it was just unlucky he's picked up, the bookings that accumulate to the ban. But let's remember, he's not been sent off at all this season. there's far more aggressive players than him in the Premier League, that's for sure. But I don't want us to get into that position where we start taking that streak out of a player, because, like I've said, this is the first Spurs side in years that go away to like a Man City and show no fear and don't show that opposition the respect that we're scared to put a challenge in or scared to take them on man for man, and we go there and get a result like a 2-1 away from home. So that's why I'm saying let's not stop the kid from playing, because he's a great talent, and let's hope he's in our shirt for many, many more years to come.
Well, Rick, a lot about the game nowadays, especially, and you saw this in the great Man United side of the 90s. A lot about the game is psychological, isn't it? You saw the great Man United players. They not just outplayed the opposition, but they'd outthink them. They'd wind them up. And a lot about the game is that psychological side. And none of us are saying we want Charlie Adam or a Robbie Savage here, but you certainly need to show the opposition who's boss mentally as well as physically.
I totally agree with you. And also Eric Dyer is another one for me. I love the fact that he gets into a few scraps, because we've been missing, to me, like an Eric Dyer for us. I know this might sound like a bizarre comparison, but he's a bit like a Roy Keane, not to the degree in terms of the dirty side, but he loves to tackle, doesn't shy of anything. And for me, you see the way he screens that back four, and I do think we missed that on Sunday, not having him screen a back four. He had to drop back into the centre-back role, which again he played very, very well. But I do think we miss him, having him shielding that back four, because he does offer such a great sense of protection. But him and Ali together, again, we found the perfect balance, and I think that was the issue as well, that the game on Sunday is quite funny. We finished the game with Mason and Bentaleb partnering each other, and they were very much the two players that last season we got the 5-3 against Chelsea against them, and we got the 2-1 against Arsenal, and now suddenly we've got fans coming out saying both of them are not good enough. Well, they weren't saying that last season when we got the 2-1 and the 5-3. So a lot of fans out there seem to have short-term memories. It goes very fast, and because of the success that we've had this season with Dyer and Ali, people forget that Bentaleb and Mason were two players progressing through, had done very well last year. So again, it goes to that whole back of the scapegoating issue. When we have a bad result, fans get on the back of players, and it's not right. It really isn't right. If anything, the players need our support more than ever. We've got such a crucial run-in to come. The last thing we want is to turn on the players. Sunday for me, again, it was a disappointment, but we move on. There's so much more to play for, and I said it on social media. We're now the end of February. By the end of February, most of our season supporting Spurs, we've got nothing to play for. We've got everything to play for at the moment. So let's put it down to a blip. And like we've already said, the players normally, when they suffer a defeat, they come back and produce a winning run. And fingers crossed that's what they'll do. Yeah,
absolutely. The future's still very much bright, isn't it? Still a lot to look forward to this season. And I was as gutted as anyone going out of the FA Cup at the weekend, because it is, for me, the most important trophy other than the Premier League. Obviously, it's the oldest cup competition in the world, part of our history. But we move on, and hopefully this season will still bear a lot of and very ripe fruit. Hopefully a lot of good things to come this season. So moving on and upwards. Lads, we've got to move on to another part of the show. We, throughout the week, guys, put on our social media various posts encouraging you guys to get in touch with the show. And one of those is an opportunity for you all to email and send in your questions for the lads regarding anything THFC. So not just about the games, but if there's anything that's playing on your mind that you want our lads' thoughts on regarding Spurs, then just give us an email, e-spurs@live.co.uk, or post it on our Twitter and Facebook, and we'll get the thoughts of the lads on the following week's show. And you've done that in your droves this week. Some great questions been sent in to us for the lads, as always. And I'm now going to put to both Ricky and Jason. First up, a question from Josh Fitter, @Josh Fitter. Go to Ricky on this one, because I've already spoken to Jace briefly about this. But Rick, your thoughts on Bentaleb as a central defensive midfielder? Do we need another as backup to Dyer, as he thought Bentaleb struggled dealing with the counter-attack?
Good question. I think we're lucky that in Dembele, although it's not his favourite position, I think he could play there at a push. But Bentaleb, again, it's one of those situations I said earlier, it's going to take time for him. He's not just going to seamlessly slot back in and play as well as he did previously. I don't see Bentaleb as a central defensive midfielder. I see him typically as a standard centre midfielder that can go forward and that can also defend. I don't think he's defensively minded enough to play as a central defensive midfielder, whereas you've got someone like Eric Dyer, who started his career as a centre-back, developed into that centre defensive mid-role at Sporting Lisbon, and then went back as a centre-back originally at Spurs. But again, that is different because with Dyer, he's been trained to have that whole defensive mind, and you very rarely see him, apart from the odd occasion, score for Spurs or get into the opposition half because he's so defensively minded. He manages that back four so well behind him and screens them so well that realistically it's very hard to find, a comparative in our squad with Eric Dyer. But Moussa Dembele for me would be the only one really I'd put as a comparative to Eric Dyer, purely because Dembele does have that great strength to see off players, and he does also have the defensive side of the game in terms of reading it, as well as the attacking side. But the issue you've got is if you do move Dembele back to defensive midfield, then I think you lose his great attributes of getting forward over the halfway line. So it's a good question. But for me, I think we're covered on the basis that we have Dembele. And for me, I just see Bentaleb really as a central midfielder and don't see him as a central defensive midfielder.
Okay, so Josh, hope that answers your question, mate.
Just on that one, mate, we
Sure.
might well find out in the next couple of games, because isn't Eric Dyer now on 9 yellows?
Yes, yeah.
So one more yellow. I mean, if he was, for instance, he gets booked against Swansea Saturday, and because it would be his second ban, he'd then miss the next two. So, a booking against Swansea makes him miss West Ham and Arsenal. So, you might well have a big decision to make whether he actually plays the game against Swansea at the weekend anyway, because I think the West Ham game is in many ways a tougher game than the Arsenal game.
Yeah, I agree.
And I definitely want Eric Dyer there with the way that Payet and people like that are playing. So, it may well be that we see Nabil come into that role again at the weekend.
Jace, would you be tempted to be looking for another specialist defensive midfielder in the summer?
I think, definitely if we're into the Champions League, as we all hope to be, I think there will come the point when you do need a genuine out-and-out one, because, we talk about rotating players for the Europa games, but, next year if we are in the Champions League and you're playing, I know you got a group game against Bayern Munich on a Wednesday, and you play Eric Dyer, then you definitely need to then rotate when you might well have Manchester United on the Saturday. So for sure, I think that's one of the roles or one of the positions he may well look at in the summer. And of course, we're constantly linked with Wanyama, aren't we? Yeah,
absolutely. There's a raft of players out there that could come in, certainly. So it'd be interesting to see what moves are made in that respect. Moving on to the next question, lads. Mont Azir 619 at Monty Al Hadi. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Jace, this one for you. When Poch substituted Dembele at half time, would it have been better to replace him with Toby and then put Dyer in midfield?
With the benefit of hindsight, maybe yes, but a goal behind, having to chase the game, it's one of those tight ones. I mean, I thought Eriksen was an obvious one to come on. I think probably the strange substitution when you're chasing a goal and you want players that have got a goal in them on the pitch. I think we was a little bit surprised to see Dele Alli go off and Ryan Mason come on. I think that was the one substitution that left me a little bit perplexed at the weekend. But it's always easier after the game, isn't it, to say, oh, we could have done this and we could have done that. I think Palace, we know, are going to hit us on the break, but the driving force was to try and score. It didn't matter if we conceded a second goal. We had to try and get an equaliser. So I think, he tried to do that. He brought Eriksen on, he brought Chadley on, and it just didn't work out for us.
Yeah, one of those days. I'm surprised he took Son off, to be honest. He was having a fairly good game, I thought, at the time. And the pace he showed in that game, I certainly haven't seen from him before. It was great to see the pace that he was attacking with. But as you say,
I thought he was going to score a Ricky VR goal at one point in the first half. And he even tackled the balloon on the way through, didn't he, at the time? I thought, this is shades of Ricky. And that's when Dele Alli, of course, hit the post twice. But no, I was a little bit surprised. That's what I mean. He took him off and he took Ali off, and you thought, we're chasing a goal, and we ended up with Onumar, who hasn't, although I thought he had a decent enough game, and Mason on the pitch, and you thought, I can't see either of those getting the goal that maybe Son or Dele Alli might well have come up with us for.
Yeah, it's a tough call, isn't it, to make when you're in the heat of the moment, I guess, and it's very easy for us to sit back in our armchairs and decide the substitutions, but when you're actually there and it's in the hustle bustle of the game, can only think it complicates matters even more. Next question, Rick, from Joval Ulby, at J Ulby. Do you think, and I never thought I'd be asking this question, but he asked, do you think we missed Lamela yesterday? Very good question.
Yeah, very good question. Bearing in mind Lamela assisted Eriksen for the goal at Man City. It's so hard with Lamela because you don't quite know what game you're going to get. There is times where, like we said, this season has been unplayable, and there's been times where he's been very quiet. I mean, what Lamela does offer you is another option. I think his work rate, like we've said, at times this season has been phenomenal. He does seem to have that ability to play that needle ball through to the last man, and maybe that's what we missed yesterday. But I still think yesterday we created so many chances. It wasn't for the lack of trying that we lost that game yesterday. It just, like I've said it, I think it's just the rub of the green. Some days it's your day, some days it isn't, and it's just one of those things. But I think that'd be harsh on the team to say that we just missed Lamela, because I still think that a team put out there from Pochettino wasn't good enough to win the game. So in answer to that question, I don't think we missed Lamela, but I do think he offers us another option, which maybe in a squad we haven't got, where he does have that ability to play, like I've just said, that eye of the needle ball.
Yeah, Joval, hope that answers your question. And finally, a question from Soxy, at Paul Soxy. This one for you, Jason. I've got to say, I absolutely echo this question. Do we practice set plays? Our corners and set plays were shocking yesterday.
Well, first of all, I'd say I think that's a thing that almost every Premier League club is guilty of. I mean, it's not just us. Almost every week when I see games, the amount of times that no side beats the first man is shocking. And, you know, when you can see Eriksen take a free kick as well as he does, you do ask yourself, why can't you take a corner? but against that, I think, haven't we scored from more set pieces than any other club this season?
Correct, yeah.
So, and so there you go. It's a tough one, isn't it? There are definitely times when it doesn't look like we put enough work into it, but the stats would say we've probably worked more than any other side this year.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I certainly think our short corners tend to work a lot better than the longer corners. The longer corners never seem to get past the first man, do they? Which can be a little bit frustrating. And you think a player of Eriksen's quality, it can ping the ball from wherever he likes, you know, and it'll always 99% of the time find the target. But corners doesn't seem to work out, but as Jace just mentioned there, the stats would say otherwise. So, Soxy, I hope that answers your questions. And guys, thank you once again for sending in your questions. Really appreciate all your interaction and feedback every single week. We'll do this again for next week. Let's have your questions. Send them into the Twitter and Facebook, guys, at @e_Spurs on Twitter. And Facebook is facebook.com/e-Spurs page, all one word. Get your questions into the lads for next week's podcast. Okay, so on to the final part of the podcast this week, which is, of course, looking forward to what we hope will be a better 7 days to come. A match against Fiorentina and Swansea, both at the Lane this time. And we'll see, obviously, how we progress in Europa, then back to league action. Seems an absolute age, doesn't it, since the last league game? Of course, it's not that long ago, but you sort of want the league games now. Only 12 to go. You want them to come thick and fast now, and let's see where it takes us. The preview for Fiorentina, of course, we saw changes over in Florence. Rick, are we likely to see the same again, and to what extent at the Lane?
Well, I think obviously the fact that we went out the FA Cup, that might have an influence on his team this coming Thursday. I expect him to go pretty much full strength. I think he'll still go with Vorm in goal, despite maybe Loris being back to full fitness. Again, I think there's a possible rotation of the fullbacks. I think Onoma, there'd be no concern if he started another game. I just think with him as a player, I think once he gets that first goal, I think that will settle him down, because he does look quite good. I think Onoma's a good player, and again, a young player needs time. And again, I wouldn't be surprised to see Bentaleb play. If he does play, he has my full support, as I've said throughout this show. But I do think there'll be a couple of changes. And, you know, this is a big game Thursday, a huge game at White Hart Lane, under the floodlights, massive European tie. Fiorentina, I know, poor side. You know, in previous years, this game, you know, Fiorentina have been a Champions League side, so they're by all means not a poor opposition. But it's still it's a great opportunity for us to get through, and I think we do need to take this game seriously, because in the space of a week, we could be knocked out of both cups, and which we don't want. So, listen, it's a massive game for us, and I hope the players don't underestimate it. It sounds like they're not. Providing we put on a good performance, we've already got the advantage of obviously getting that away goal in Florence. I think we'll do the job, and hopefully it'll be in front of a packed house at White Hart Lane, and the fans will see the players over the line.
Jace, in terms of the style of play in this one, Fiorentina are going to come into the game in an attacking mindset, aren't they? They have to score in this game, otherwise they're out. Do you think that we might need to change, therefore, our style of play?
I don't think it matters who we play. I think Poch says that's the way we're going to play. We'll press from the front, and when we've got the ball, we'll use it in the normal way. I don't see us changing formation, shape, or mentality or anything. One of the interesting things about it, again with the discussion of Europa League football and Premier League football and such, it's very interesting that Fiorentina are third in Italy, and yet they rested players at the weekend when they're trying to tie up a Champions League place themselves. They actually rested 4 players for the Europa League game. That's the difference, in importance that the foreign sides or the continental sides place more than we do. They don't see it as an irrelevant competition of no prestige. They all look at it as this is a serious competition to win. And of course, you also have that Italy-England coefficient where, one or two of our sides have got to start doing well in the Europa League. Otherwise, the constant race for the top 4 we talk about suddenly becomes the top 3. So, the irony is if our own performances in Europe tail off, the year we'd get 4th or something, we don't get it because we haven't performed well enough in the Europa League for the coefficient. And that would be a typical Spurs thing, wouldn't it? So I think that the key thing for us, is try not to concede that away goal. I think we will see Toby, Wimmer and Dyer, that triangle, if you like, in the centre of the pitch. And from there on in, I think Kane will start the game. And after that, I'm quite comfortable with whoever else he decides to fit around that little axis.
Yeah, agreed. I think, providing we play a relatively strong side, and this one should be, I think, we showed in Florence that we're certainly capable of beating Fiorentina. We only came away with the draw because of the rather fortunate goal that they got there. So I think providing they go out with a relatively strong side, there's nothing I've seen, as I said earlier, to overly worry us against Fiorentina. And they are going to come at us and attack. They're going to go for the throats, aren't they? Because they have to. So it's going to be interesting to see how the game pans out. Let's get a prediction from the lads on this one first up. Rick?
I'm going to go 3-1 Spurs.
3-1 Spurs. So nice cushion there. John's not here, but if he was, I'm sure it'd be 6-1. Jace?
I'll go 2-0 to Tottenham. But I haven't forgiven John for going 1-1 against Colchester yet.
No, I don't. He never lived that one down, I don't think. It's going to. Both predictions say that we should have a bit of a cushion in terms of the scoreline, but also that we might concede. So be interesting to see. I think Wimmer will play again, obviously. Wonder, you would expect, wouldn't you, lads, to see Alderweireld come back into the defence. It'd be interesting to see which fullbacks he plays. Will he go back to Davies and Trippier at fullback? Personally, I think Trippier is now our best right back. Might come to the lads in a moment on that one. I think once again we saw Kyle Walker once again nicking one of John's lines, having a few brain farts on Sunday. I think he didn't have the best of games, but I think Trippier's every single time he's come in, he's been asked to do a job, he's done it and more. So it'd be interesting to see what lineup we go with in that one again. On to Swansea, lads. Now, again, another set of circumstances for Pochettino to think about. You would think, lads, no doubt about this one, Rick, full strength all the way?
Of course. I'm sure that I say the Premier League is the bread and butter. We're in a fantastic position, like I think we've said recently, and like I've said, full strength team. Toby will be back, irregardless, whatever happens. Obviously, like Jason said, crucial that Dyer tries to avoid obviously being booked, because we will need him for those West Ham and Arsenal games, such crucial games in our season defining, but they all are now with 12 to go. They all really are season defining games, and like I've said tonight, I still think this team have shown that when we've had a defeat, they've had that character to bounce back, and fingers crossed we'll see that on Thursday and see it Sunday. But against Swansea, it's not going to be an easy game. We're going to be in that position again where a team are going to come to White Hart Lane to frustrate. They're going to probably play for a point, and again, it's going to be the onus on us to try and break them down. And we're going to again be having that issue where it's the Europa League hangover. How are we going to cope with that? That's another thing where it has dented us this season. There has been marks of improvement of where we've come back from Europa League games and won. but there's still been the niggles where we've come back from Europa League games and dropped points and suffered defeat. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But having said that, we are playing at home in Europe rather than away, so that will hopefully favour us. But again, fingers crossed if we play to our potential, because this Spurs side, for me, don't need to go out and score 5 or 6. We can just score the 1 or 2 and defensively be good enough to keep a clean sheet. I still think we'll have hopefully too much for Swansea, and we'll see it over the line and get a crucial win. And that game obviously is a massive tie, bearing in mind our friends down the road are away to Man United. And again, we know we can't rely on Man United these days, but they haven't got a great record up there. So it could be potentially a really, really big weekend for Spurs in the Premier League. So even more so, we have to go and try and get the 3 points.
It's a really interesting set of scenario, isn't it? Because I was just thinking there as you were speaking, Rick, that obviously we don't want Arsenal to win because they're up there in the top 4 with us at the moment. But should Arsenal beat Man United, Jace, and we beat Swansea, that would then give us a 13-point lead over 5th place. Would that then be enough, do you think, to claim that top 4 spot?
Well, I'll gladly let them have a draw. There'll never be a day when I want Arsenal to win a game. It just never happens. So I think a draw would be perfect, wouldn't it? The gap then becomes, as long as we win 12, it means Arsenal have dropped points. I think that more the key game at the weekend would be the Leicester-Norwich game, because, as we said last week, if for some, unsurprised or surprising reason, rather, Norwich could get something at Leicester, and I don't expect them to, but if by some miracle chance they do get something, then the win against Swansea would put us top of the league, and that might be when the real pressure then starts to come on us, and more questions then get asked of the squad if we actually go top. But I think with the Swansea game, I think that their style of play has actually changed quite a bit this year, and the new manager's come in. He won at Everton in his first game, but then that bounce has kind of stopped, and they lost I think at home to Southampton last time out. They don't actually play with a great deal of pace up front anymore, and he's tended to use Gylfi as his most advanced player. And so, you don't expect to get hit too much on the break with pace. And I might actually be tempted to leave Dyer out of the Swansea game and think, OK, I definitely want him at West Ham, and in an ideal world, I want him at Arsenal. So that might be the one change I'd make for Swansea, is to leave Eric Dyer out of that game.
Yes.
But the one thing we definitely can't do with Swansea, we all know that, is give stupid free kicks away on the edge of the box, because Gylfi can take an excellent free kick. And I think that will be the biggest danger to us, is his set pieces in and around the edge of the box.
Yeah, it's the return of the former Spur once again, isn't it, in Gylfi Sigurdsson? And we all know how former Spurs tend to do against Spurs. So let's hope that isn't the case this time. Obviously, we know Manchester City and Arsenal have the experience in the title race. But in terms of bottle, Jace, which of the top 4 teams so far this season have shown you that they've got the bottle to hold their nerve and take top spot?
Well, I think ourselves and Leicester have both shown bottle. I mean, as I said a few weeks ago, you have to hand it to Leicester. They go to Manchester City and win. They go to Tottenham and win. When they've had a defeat, they've always bounced back. And I thought at the Emirates the other day, 11v11, they looked the better side in that game, and they almost did hold on for the result. So, and I think on another previous show, I said Leicester showed the bottle to win the league 2 years ago, and they showed the bottle to stay up last year. So I definitely don't see Leicester bottling it as such. And whilst people talk about the experience of Arsenal, it's 10-11 years since they've won the league. Yep. And most of their recent experience is actually of them bottling it when it's really come down to the crucial time. They've either bottled it in February, and then they've kind of won their last 6 or 7 games to nick 4th, or it's been like the year at Birmingham when we had Gallas crying on the pitch, and it all seemed to be in their hands, and they've bottled it at that stage. So, and Manchester City have definitely shown signs of bottling it in recent weeks. But so I think us and Leicester have shown the better of the mentalities this season. But, it is the unknown, isn't it? And I think a lot more will tell us when we have that West Ham and Arsenal week. And I think our bottle will get really tested that week. And if we can come out of that with 4 points or 6 points, we'd be delighted to take 6, wouldn't we? But I think even if we took 4 points, or even if we lost at West Ham and then bounced straight back to beat Arsenal, I think that would tell us a lot about our bottle.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the sort of thing you could see happening. I think that win at Man City has made a lot of people stand up. I think Spurs were getting great comments, but I don't think a lot of people actually really believed that they were made of, stern stuff. I think they were improving. A lot of people recognised that. But that win at Man City now, I think even the neutrals out there, I think, have now recognised Spurs as genuine contenders in there, which is fantastic to see.
Well, I think the manner of winning that game, of having had the lead and then conceding with, what was it, about 15 minutes to go, for us to then go on and win it again. I think, there was a lot of neutrals, certainly where we were watching it, thought that once Manchester City has scored, they thought, right, now we'll see the old Spurs and it will be Manchester City that go on to win it. But it wasn't, was it? It was us that went on to win it. So I think we've answered that first question, but there's, you'll need to answer more than one question to win the league.
Certainly will. We're going to have to answer another 12 questions, and let's hope we get every one of them right. It's going to be fantastic to watch, isn't it? Great time to be a Spurs fan, as always. And let's hope we go into the next week with a couple of wins. And let's build on this and let's keep it going. Fantastic stuff, lads, as always. Great show tonight. I hope everybody out there has enjoyed it as much as we have doing it. Don't forget, guys, to get in touch with us. We really need you guys out there to have your say on the show. If you enjoyed what you hear, if you agree or disagree with anything on the show tonight, don't forget to get in touch with us on Twitter at @E_Spurs, on Facebook /e-Spurs page, Instagram at @E_Spurs. We're on the lot, so there's no excuse not to get in touch with e-Spurs and have your say on the podcast. And of course, as always, we'll read as many as we can out on the following week's podcast. We'll be back after the Swansea game next weekend. Don't forget, guys, to look out for our extra time episode, which is out on Thursday, and get involved in the e-Spurs talking point every week. From Jason, Ricky and myself, have a great week, guys, and as always, come on, you Spurs.
We're gonna do it like we did.